What's going on, guys? Nate here at Dyno Works, and today we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart that I've wanted to bring up for a while. And that is the quality of our custom ECU mapping. Because it's as good as it fucking gets, there's a lot of haters out there that think otherwise. Now, this ZX6 I've got here on the dyno, 19 to 23 ZX6, full acro exhaust, stock stack, stock air filter, pretty standard stuff we've seen 100 times before. But this guy believed what everybody else had told him is there's no way a mail-in flash is as good as tuning on the dyno. So, he wanted it done, and was willing to spend the money, and I was happy to take it. So this is how the bike performed with just our ECU flash when it came on in. 123.5 horsepower, 49.5 foot-pounds of torque. Remember, you can see run 5 is our baseline. I did nothing other than just run this bike for about 5 minutes just to get it up to temp. And running it a handful of times is actually really important. We're gonna get back to that in just a second. So you can see that a little over an hour later, and gosh, 11 passes later, I finally got this thing perfectly tuned and dialed in, and the end result, 123.86 horsepower and 49.5 foot-pounds of torque. So almost an hour and a half of my time in this room smoothing out every 1% of the fuel mapping to make it as a perfect running motorcycle as possible was worth 0.3 of a horsepower over our mail-in ECU flashing service this guy had already received for his exact intake and exhaust combination on this bike. Now, was the air-fuel ratio off a little bit with our flash? Yeah, sure. At peak power, about 0.2 of a point. And as you can see there, 0.2 of a point translates to less than 0.4 of a pony. And that is the exact same mapping accuracy and quality that I have advertised, that we create here at Dyno Works for years. But there are still so many people out there that just don't believe it. Or other shops, and there's a lot of other shops out there that don't believe it either. And they're more than happy to have folks that already have our mail-in ECU flashing service done to their motorcycle come on into their shop, especially at free dyno days. If you ever see a free dyno day, somebody's trying to make a few bucks. Nobody does anything for free in this world. And they'll pull a bike up on a dyno, run it once or twice, and go, oh man, look how rich it is, or look how far off it is. I can definitely make this better for you. Well, here's how they can do that and what they're actually showing you. So when they roll your bike up on the dyno, just like this one is here right now, they're going to go ahead and let it warm up for maybe, I don't know, a minute or two. Go ahead and put a sniffer in the exhaust or a wideband in, however they want to do it. Hook up a tack signal if they're not being lazy, and then run it. And here's what you're going to see. Run 1 on this thing, 117.5 horsepower, only 46 foot-pounds of torque. It's a little bit rich everywhere. What the fuck, two-wheel dyno works? So let me explain what's actually happening here. When you first run any modern motorcycle, it's in cold start enrichment. On these bikes, for example, cold start enrichment does not end until 175 degrees Fahrenheit when it comes to coolant temp. So once the coolant gets to 175, then all of a sudden the ECU stops artificially adding additional fuel. That's part 1 of this issue. Part 2 is the engine oil temperature. Hotter oil is thinner oil. So magically, by running the thing a second time, guess what happens to the output? By doing nothing whatsoever, other than running it again, the bike's all of a sudden gained 3 horsepower. Purely just because the oil's now a little bit thinner, and there's less drag in the crankcase. And anybody that's owned and operated a dyno for more than about 2 seconds knows this. You see it every day. This is standard procedure on any modern motorcycle. And guess what? If you're at some other tuner after you've already had the bike flash, they're probably upset you get tuned through them. Or if you're at a free dyno day, because again, nothing's free in this fucking world, they're trying to make money off of you. So they're gonna give you all of a sudden that low output run. They know you're going to look up on the website on your phone and go, hey, it's supposed to make 124, 125 horsepower with that setup. What the fuck, two-wheel? Yeah, sure, I'll have you tune my bike for me. And they can literally do nothing and all of a sudden hand you a graph with massively more power than you came in with. Because again, by doing nothing other than running the bike 5 times to get the oil up to the proper temperature they should be logging anything at, and to get the coolant temperature up to the proper operating temperature, the bike has somehow magically gained 6 horsepower. And again, there's nothing that happened here other than running the motorcycle for like 3 minutes and a handful of passes. You can see the first run there is at 221, and the one I've got highlighted was 224. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are a ton of other tricks that anybody, again, that's owned and operated a dyno for any real amount of time has figured out. Common one that I see actually almost on a daily basis when looking at other people's dyno videos is they don't actually have something like this fan right here, or they've got it and it's just not actually positioned into the ram air inlet tube there. And again, this isn't to simulate ram air, it's just to make sure that you're pushing in air that's at least the ambient temperature of the room. That way you don't get heat soak in the thing and all of a sudden the ECU is pulling out timing. Or they'll go ahead and just not bother checking the pressure of the tire, knowing it's probably low, because let's face it, most riders don't check their tire pressure all that often, and they'll run it with, say, 20 PSI in it. Well, guess what? On this bike, that's good for like 3 horsepower. Or my personal favorite, having a faulty ambient air temperature or barometric pressure sensor. Because a miscalibrated or broken baro or intake temperature sensor on the dyno itself is worth several horsepower when it comes to the correction factor in the DynoJet software. I've even seen some of the shittiest, or shystiest I should say, tuners out there take a fucking hairdryer to the brain on their dyno, all of a sudden get the thing making it like 120, 130 degrees ambient temperature, run the bike, presto changeo, it adds like 4 or 5 horsepower. And they're doing this because, again, you can get improvements like this by doing absolutely nothing. But in reality, nothing's actually changed about the performance of the motorcycle. Now, let's circle back here. I bring this all up not to trash talk other tuners out there. There are high quality tuners out there that are not us. We're not the only people in this country that know how to tune a motorcycle properly. However, we're definitely one of the top handful of them in there in the country. And the rest of them, well, they're either subpar, they're not doing you a proper service, or they're flat out lying to you. And the third one is the one that pisses me off and makes me absolutely lose my mind. Because when you do it right and get proper custom ECU mapping from somebody like us that actually buys these bikes brand new and develops mapping on the dyno and tests it on the track for every intake and exhaust combination imaginable, you get quality mapping that you will not be able to significantly improve on the dyno, period, end of story. And this bike just happens to be a great example of that, because I can literally walk up here and show you what I've already covered, which is the 0.3 of a horsepower that this guy gained, having us trim out that additional 2 or 3% fuel in one spot or another versus the mail-in ECU flashing service he already had. Now, if you are looking to get your bike properly tuned and dialed in, and we just so happen to support your specific year and model, and again, the list of the bikes we support are all there on our website, I can guarantee that you will not find higher quality custom ECU mapping anywhere else than right here at Tool Dynoworks. And it will be within just a few percent of perfect when it comes to fueling, and the ignition and the throttle-by-wire mapping will be vastly superior to what your average local dyno tuner can ever provide you. Because we put in more time and R&D into all the bikes that we support than anybody else out there. So please don't fall for the misinformation or flat-out lies from a lot of other tuners in this industry. And if you do have any questions about getting your bike properly tuned and dialed in, do not hesitate to email us at support@tooldynoworks.com. I personally check our tech support emails several times every day, and we are always happy to help.